Reagons. I've been in banking for about 15 years. Before Reagons, I worked for Wells Fargo for about 10. So I've kind of seen both sides of the corporate office with Wells and then the more hometown bank with Reagons. And so I'm here today to just share some knowledge with you that I've collected and the importance of digital banking. All right. So my agenda today will focus primarily on certain big questions like how can you use banking technology to help you simplify your life and make banking easier? A couple key notes are by adding convenience and saving time over traditional banking, by simplifying money management, by knowing what's happening with your account, and by making savings easier. Reagons is committed to making banking easier. With multiple options to handle your banking needs, we are trying to empower you to bank easier. With doing this, I'm going to cover a couple of different services banks offer digitally in order to accommodate your guys' needs. So the first thing that we always recommend for all of our clients is direct deposit. The reason why we recommend direct deposit is because a long time ago when everybody was receiving paper checks back in the 90s, check fraud was rampant. People were stealing Social Security checks out of the mailbox, customers were not receiving them, and it made it a real nightmare for individuals to do banking. So by setting up a direct deposit, there are a couple of key benefits that helps you guys avoid certain scams. First and foremost, it's convenient, no driving to the bank, no depositing checks. With Reagons, you actually get your direct deposit 2 days early, so if the budget's a little tight, you will receive those funds earlier than expected, and that does work with Social Security. So say for instance you get paid on the 1st, well you're going to get that on the 28th or the 29th, depending on which month we're in, or possibly the 26th if it's February. Quicker funds availability. There is no delay with direct deposits. So as soon as the direct deposit hits the bank, those funds are available for you to spend, which for a lot of my retirees are very important because that's the day rent is normally due. Promoting savings. So when you have a direct deposit, you can schedule recurring transfers into your savings account on that specific day so that you can kind of fund what your expectations are. So a lot of my customers who are trying to buy a home, for instance, they'll take a certain percentage of their direct deposit, move it to a savings, block all online access so they can't see it, because if you can't see it, you won't want to touch it. And then reliability. Direct deposit, especially with Social Security, does not fail. If it fails, there's a problem on Social Security's end and you need to contact them. But in all cases, it is much simpler, much easier, and much faster. The next option that we'd like to talk about is bill pay. Bill pay is an online form with your bank where you can plug in basically the account number and where you want that check to be mailed. The big benefits on bill pay is you can schedule it recurring. So every single month when you have to pay your power bill, your water, your cable, and mostly like the cable, the bill doesn't change. So you're cutting or printing, you're sending the same check. So by utilizing bill pay, you're not only saving the cost on checks, but you're also ensuring that your bills are being paid on time. All right, ATM technologies. So this has really changed over the last several years. ATMs now have the functions where you can use the tap function because a lot of the ATMs have skimmers. And we're gonna talk about the different functions on the debit card a little bit later. But for ATM technologies, they've really grown so that you can do withdrawals, you can do deposits, you can make checks available sooner. There is a fee involved in that. And other different services that the ATMs provides, like account balances, transaction history, so that you guys can stay alert on any kind of fraudulent activity that may be going on in your account and you're not aware of. Using your mobile device on banking is very important nowadays. Your mobile device is the quickest and easiest way for you to check your accounts to ensure that fraud is not occurring. We strongly recommend that you utilize your mobile device, check it at least once a day, because especially in Pinellas County, fraud is rampant on debit cards. I myself, I get about 10 scam likely calls a day, and I think I'm on the lower end because I block them all. But So definitely with this area, because it's a bunch of retirees, they definitely like to target the debit cards of the older population because they're not checking it every day. So it is important to utilize your cell phones, get that access, get the mobile apps. It also helps you keep track of your spending more efficiently, so it helps you budget a little better to make sure you're not spending in the wrong areas. One area that Reagons really excels at in the mobile app is we have this thing where it kind of does a budget breakdown for you. So like if you feel like you're not saving enough money, they'll tell you you're spending X amount on food, X amount on utilities, X amount on rent, so that you can really hone in your budget and cut where you need to cut to make it a more effective banking experience and to save better for you guys. The next thing I want to talk about with the mobile phone is the lock it feature. Now, the lock it feature is something that Reagons and many other major banks offer that allows you to turn the card on and off. So if it's something that you're not going to particularly use very often, you can leave the card off, and if a scammer does get a hold of the information, they won't be able to debit the funds, but you will be able to see those transactions on your online banking so you can verify that there is fraudulent activity going on.
So the transactions will take place?
No, so under the lock it feature,
Mm-hmm.
so it won't pop up on your transaction log, but when you go into lock it, it will show you all transactions that have been rejected.
Attempted, okay.
So that if you know that you didn't spend your money at CVS, for instance, or
Yeah.
didn't attempt to
Buy a
spend your
big
money at
screen or
CVS,
something in Las
that's a
Vegas.
big red flag to contact your bank to make sure that somebody's not taking advantage of your funds. Now, Lock It is not seamless though. There's certain features that Lock It just can't get past. So when you lock your card and you have something recurring, like your utility bill or Netflix, because it's a recurring transaction or a credit transaction, those transactions will still flow through. And I'm going to explain the difference between debit and credit transactions. So, debit transactions, when you use your card and you put your PIN number in, that tells the vendor that they have to process that transaction immediately. So you walk outside, you pull it up on your phone, you're going to see that transaction pending. When you process as credit, which means you're either putting your zip code in or you're signing, that tells the vendor that they can process that transaction on their time, which legally means they can withhold that data from the bank anywhere from 1 to 7 business days. In that window, the bank has absolutely no idea what you spent because the vendor hasn't told us yet. The reason why vendors don't process on a daily basis is because normally when they batch it out, there's a cost through their merchant services. So they want to stretch that out as long as they can to save their funds from having to pay the processor.
Okay.
So it is important to know kind of the differences on how that functions with the Lock It feature, but this is something that I use every single day, and I would strongly urge you guys to use it too because it prevents so much fraud from being run through the account. And the fact that once you're on the mobile app, the Lock It feature takes 2 seconds to turn on and off. It is very, very simplistic. It's a little slide bar. So definitely something I recommend utilizing because it will keep your accounts much safer.
You can turn it on and off as many times as you want.
Many times as you want. I would say give it about 30 seconds from when you turn it on or turn it off from using the card. So do it when you first get in that line at the grocery store so that when you get up there, it'll actually function. Because I've had customers try to use it and then it didn't go through, they unlocked it and they were sitting there for 3 minutes trying to get it to work. So you do want to activate it a little bit before you get to that terminal, but it is a much more effective way to protect your accounts because basically it cuts the access point off. The next thing I'm going to talk about is transferring and sending funds. Now there's a lot of different ways to transfer and send funds with banks. One of my least favorite ways is this thing called an internal transfer. Internal transfers, the way that those work is one bank will do test deposits to another bank. Those test deposits will be like 1 cent, 2 cents, 3 cents. And it'll happen over the course of 4 or 5 days. And then you have to go back to your bank and say, 1 cent was deposited on this day, 2 cents were deposited on this day, so on and so forth. And then that will create a linkage between the 2 accounts. Now, once those 2 accounts are linked, you can transfer from one institute to the other institute, but normally it takes 2 to 3 days to show up, and there's normally a $3 to $5 fee depending on which bank you're using. So it's not the most efficient way to do it, but for individuals who are in other countries and other countries don't offer Zelle, it's an easier way to transfer those funds overseas. Now, with Zelle, it's one area that I really do like to talk about because over the last few years, it has become much, much safer. So initially with Zelle, when it first came out, there wasn't really a whole lot of protections, a whole lot of safeguards. There was no dual authentication. So with Zelle, how it used to work is you go onto your online banking, you register for Zelle, you plug the phone number you wanted to send it to, it's gone. You've sent the money. Now the way Zelle works is when you register with Zelle, they text you or email you a code to verify that it's your identity. Whenever you create a new contact, they also text you to identify your identity, making sure that you're actually creating that contact. With this dual layer authentication, it allows us to remain a lot safer when transferring large portions of money. And then the great thing about Zelle also is it's free. It doesn't cost anything. There is no transactional based fee. That is all handled by the banks that operate with Zelle. So I've got a lot of positive feedback from Zelle. Now, it is not infallible. It will not let you send a wire's worth of funds to do a house closing, but for your day-to-day activities, trying to get your neighbor that $5 you owe him, it's a very effective tool. Next thing I would like to discuss is mobile deposit. Now, mobile deposit is one of those things where you can only do it from the mobile app. So you can't do it from your hardware here just because the interface does not agree with the camera. So mobile deposit's a great feature, especially if you're out of country, out of state, you're just not around. For instance, Reagons, we're only a Southeast bank. So if you're in North Dakota, there's not going to be any Reagons there for you to deposit. So this is one outlet that you can actually take a picture of the check and get the funds into your account. Reagons is unlike most banks where we have the feature that allows you to make those funds immediately available with a fee. Those fees are normally percentage based on the check, but it is a very convenient way to get your funds into your accounts if you're not around your banking locations.
How do they prevent the check from being deposited a second time?
So if a check is deposited a second time, so you do the mobile deposit and then you deposit it in branch, if that issue is not resolved within 30 days, that report goes to check systems, and whoever did that is blocked from all banking until the issue is resolved. So not only will it shut your account down at the bank you're at, but it will prevent you from opening any other bank accounts. So they've got a really tight leash on the mobile deposits. The reason they have such a tight leash is because it's too easy to defraud that type of system, just like you brought up. So once you do it once, they're not going to give you any slack. They're going to pull those funds back out, and they're going to close your accounts, and you won't be able to bank anywhere else. Their thought process behind that is weed out all the bad apples, and then we can kind of make policies for the good apples. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. The next thing I want to talk about is the different ways to use your debit cards. So there's really 4 ways in the wild to use your debit cards, and I'm going to start with the safest and then work my way down to the least safe. The safest way to use your debit card in the wild, no questions asked, is with Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, or Google Pay. The reason why those are safer than any other method is when you embed that card to your phone and you use it to tap to pay, it generates a random card number that is only good for one transaction. So if there's a skimmer or a reader on there trying to steal the card information, they're going to get a bunch of useless gobbledygook that's never going to work again. So that is hands down the safest way. Now, say for instance you're not super techie, you're not really comfortable with that. The other next safest way is the tap to pay function. The tap to pay function, your card will have it on the back. There'll be like little wavies, and I can show you when I'm not on camera because I'm not putting my card on camera. But there's little waves on the back of the card. When you go to like Publix, you'll see those waves on their pen pad machines. If you touch those two together, it will read the RFD chip and it will immediately pay for you. The reason that's safer is because it's new. So the new shiny thing is always the safest because the fraudsters haven't really figured out how to integrate into it yet. So for right now, very safe way to pay. In 6 months, I can't guarantee that. The next safest way is the chip. The chip is the next safest because it has more security measures than your standard swipe does. But the chip, the real issue with that is that you actually have to physically insert the card into the machine, and you just don't know what's behind those inner workings. The reason why I think the chip is not as safe as it used to be is, I'm going to use gas pumps as the example. Gas stations that are closed overnight. There's 2 gas pump manufacturers in the country. One key opens up all their pumps. The stickers that say sealed certified, you can buy those on eBay as well. So what these fraudsters are doing is they're buying the key, they're buying the stickers, they're going to gas stations that are closed overnight, they're cracking them open, putting a skimmer in, closing it, putting a sticker on. It looks super legit. You put your card in, bang, they have your information.
I get the little thing, before I.
So it used to be that. They used to put the little stickers that looked just like the terminal that would read it when you put your card in. That's not what they're doing anymore. Now they're cracking the whole machine open and putting on the inside of the guts, because everybody really realized that if you just tug on it, it'll fall off. So now that they're putting in the guts, you're tugging on the actual hardware.
The original one, they're intercepting it.
The inside is where the skimmer is.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a lot more of those frauds take place, and so I would strongly urge you, if you're gonna use a gas pump to fill up, I know it's a bit of a bear, but take the 10 steps. Go inside. It's going to keep your account much safer than if you use that terminal outside. Because the likelihood of somebody walking in, cracking that terminal open, putting a skimmer in, closing it up, and the attendant not saying anything at all is not impossible, but it's very unlikely unless it's an inside job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
I never thought of that. I always used the pump, but now I bought an EV. So.
Well, yeah, and the pump isn't so bad if you've got the tap to pay, or it's a well-lit, well-recorded gas station.
Yeah,
I don't really see the Wawas getting hit so much, but like the Synovises are just a nightmare. Also, Walmart is a big culprit as well with the self-checkouts, because nobody's watching those terminals. People are putting skimmers in them all the time. So just be very cautious when you're at Walmart, because they don't have the tap to pay function yet. Does that make sense? Right. All right. The next thing I want to talk about is Reagons Insights. So Reagons, from a bank standpoint, on our online banking, we have these things called Reagons Insights. And these are basically tools that are free to anybody to use to do like budgeting, to do debt calculations, whether it's worth doing a personal loan to pay off your credit cards, at what tipping point that is going to be. These insights really kind of open the eyes to my customers on the back end of financing and all of the structural ideas that really go behind, well, should I refinance? Should I put a home equity in place? So these insights really help my customers guide themselves and really understand kind of what they need to achieve from a banking standpoint. Outside of that, really, that covers pretty much what the packet wants me to cover. So any specific tech questions that I can answer for you, I will do the best of my ability with my 15 years experience from a banking standpoint to answer them. Does anyone have any questions?
Can you explain what you explained to me about the Zelle?
Sure.
And why people say that they didn't get it, they sent it, they didn't get it, and where it goes?
Sure.
Because that was very insightful.
Sure. So the way Zelle works is when you register on Zelle, you have to register your phone number or your email address. That links to your bank account and tells Zelle where to put the money. So if somebody hasn't properly enrolled on one end, say for instance they typed their email wrong or they're one digit off on their phone number, and someone tries to Zelle to them, well, Zelle's not going to know where to put those funds. And so what happens is that Zelle will sit in Zelle's account for about 3 business days. After 3 business days, if Zelle has nowhere to land that money, it will go right back to the sender. The issue with Zelle is if you aren't paying attention when you're registering, you could very easily Zelle to somebody different. So if you transpose that 1 digit or you transpose that email address, then those funds, if somebody else has that registered, it's going to that other person. And because you're the one who initialized the transaction, you're not going to be able to get that money back because it looks like you authorized it. So Zelle's very tricky with that because you just got to make sure all your ducks are in a row before you really start doing that.
I always test it with $1.
Well, I think 5 is the lowest you can do with Zelle. It used to be $1. I think they upped it to 5 about 2-3 months ago. Now with Zelle though, there is a new feature when you're sending to a new individual. There'll be a pop-up window that comes up and says, this is the name associated with this account number or this phone number or this email. So you just want to really make sure that you're looking at the right thing, and I hope you're not sending to Jim Smith because there's a billion of those out there. Does that make sense?
Well, explained too that most people think that it shows back up once it doesn't get received, it shows back up into your account. But I thought it showed back up as like a deposit does or money back in, but it doesn't, you were saying.
So it depends on your bank. Every bank handles that a little bit differently. With Reagons, I can confirm that it says return to Zelle, but other banks may handle that situation different. Especially if it's a smaller hometown bank, they probably don't have as much tech as Reagons, and so they may code that as a deposit. But a lot of cases, what happens is when you send a Zelle, it sits in your pending. And then if it's never received after 3 days, that pending transaction just vanishes. So the money's put back in the account, there's no transaction log of the transaction because the money never officially left the bank. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any other questions I can answer for you?
Can you give examples of things where you've seen customers come in and they may think it's the bank at fault and it was actually something that they did or didn't do, or money came out of their account?
So, I mean, the easiest example of that would be fraudsters using the gift card scams. So with individuals who get defrauded by a fraudster and they tell them that, hey, go to CVS, buy $500 worth of gift cards, scratch the back off and read them to me. Because the individual actually went into CVS, they're on the camera reel buying the gift cards, we can't provide that that was fraudulent because the customer actually initialized it. So that type of fraud claim would more than likely be declined. Another example would be, say for instance, I have a lover in Russia that I've never met before. And I go in and I wire her $2,000 so that she can come see me in America. Well, I initialized that wire. I sat in front of that banker and told that banker that that was a legitimate transaction. I'm not going to be able to get that money back because I'm the one who initialized it. So it depends on who's doing the transaction. Where in most fraud cases, a fraudster gets a hold of your card number and they start buying stuff on Amazon or they start buying stuff on eBay. So because you're not the one initializing that transaction, the fraudster's going in and queuing that number in themselves. When they do the research and they look at the IP address, it's not going to code as your computer, and the bank is going to know that that person was using the account fraudulently. So I mean, those are really the different cases, whether it's customer driven, so if the customer's being fooled into doing something, likelihood of us being able to get those money back is very, very light. Not impossible, I'm not going to say that, but it's going to be much more difficult. Where if it's a fraudster who's initializing that transaction, the likelihood of getting those funds back are much, much higher.
I got a question about kind of the opposite situation. You go to make a donation or you go to buy something that caught your attention on the side, and you can't get in. It wants you to log in or password or something like that. I said, screw it, just go on.
Sure.
Why would they make it hard to give or hard to buy something or hard to pay something?
So, 2 reasons. A, they don't want fraudsters dumping funds into that, because when a fraudster does that, they're not their money, and it's gonna throw off their budgeting.
Okay.
2, they wanna make sure that the individual who's actually donating gets the tax credit, because when you donate to a nonprofit, that gives you a tax credit and it reduces your earned income. Now, I'm not an accountant, I don't know all the ins and outs about that, but that would be my best guess on why they would require that kind of registration. Because any kind of charitable donation, you should get like I don't think it's a 1099, but something to that equivalent, some form of tax doc proving that you gave that donation. So that's probably why they require a login. Plus, I would imagine that most nonprofits have to source where their funds come from. So that probably meets their legal requirements as well.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Good presentation.
Awesome, guys. Well, Reagons is doing something very special this month. If any of you are interested in establishing a bank account with Reagons, we are more than happy to assist with that. And because you listened to my presentation, I have a flyer and I can offer you $300 to try us out. If there's any interest after the presentation's done, I'd be more than happy to show you the ins and outs of that, okay?
All right, I'll take a flyer.
Cool.
And is there also a way of when this goes up for people watching this
I will
presentation?
send you a link so
Okay.
that you can upload it with that.
Okay.
So they can scan it. When I do that though, I'm gonna put my banker ID on there.
Yep.
That is the only way I get credit for that.
Yep.
So anybody who is interested, please put that ID in, or I don't know if I'll be able to come back in.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.